Welcome to our May Discord webinar for the EcoL platform. I'm Jen, and I'm just here to quickly introduce the presentation, which will be a follow-up from our March webinar, which was focused on gelling agents and cold process emulsions, again featuring Alex Tolstoy, an offline cosmetic chemist, Jane Barber from Making Skincare, and Annalisa Branca from Skin Perspective. This webinar will be part one of a two-part series. This one will focus on the core components of a typical emulsion, from emollients to emulsifiers, thickeners to humectants. I hope you find this webinar informative and helpful. Stay tuned. The part two of this webinar series will be on reverse engineering. Big thank you to Alex, Jane, and Annalisa for donating your time and expertise. And with that, I leave you with the webinar. Enjoy!
Hi, my name is Alex, and today we're learning how to analyze lotions and creams. So what is a lotion? What is a cream? What's their difference to gel creams or body butters? So these are all types of emulsions. These are just marketing terms that are used to describe the different types of emulsions that are made in the cosmetic industry. Before we learn the differences between these emulsions, which will be discussed by Annalisa, we must first know what an emulsion is and what composes an emulsion. An emulsion, in simple terms, is a mixture between two immiscible liquids like oil and water. No matter how much you mix it, if you just have oil and water in a solution, it would go back to their respective phases. Like when you're making vinaigrette, no matter how much you mix it, if you don't have an emulsifier to bind it together, it would stay separate. So anything that has an oil and water in it, or anything that has two immiscible liquids in it, is called an emulsion. So now that we know what is an emulsion, we can now discuss what are the ingredients that compose an emulsion. So these ingredients are divided into several categories, such as emollients, which are ingredients that make your skin soft and smooth. They do this by filling in the cracks in your skin. We also have your humectants. These ingredients increase the hydration level in your skin to resist rough or scaly dryness. You also have your emulsifiers, which are the main ingredient that allow the mixing of water-soluble and oil-soluble ingredients together. We also have your stabilizers or thickeners that help prevent the emulsion from separating. We also have preservative systems and antioxidants. Their main function is to prevent the growth of microorganisms or to prevent the oxidation of ingredients. And then we have your actives. These actives help your skin's natural processes to target specific skin problems like acne, pigmentation, dryness, and aging. And then the final group includes miscellaneous ingredients like pH adjusters, colors, and fragrances. The first group that we're going to discuss are emollients. Emollients are the oil-soluble components of an emulsion. They, as I've said before, they make your skin elastic, soft, and smooth by filling in the gaps in your skin. And these are usually used around 3 to 8%, depending on the type of product that you're using, that you're going to make. Here I have a sample emulsion, and I've highlighted the emollients that they've used in this particular product. It's a CeraVe moisturizing cream, and the main emollients are caprylic triglyceride, petrolatum, and dimethicone. Emollients can be classified by their chemical types. commonly used are fatty acids. These are your plant oils, your shea butters, your vegetable or plant oils. These are basically just a combination of different types of fatty acids. They have different skin feels. They can be really hydrating and oily, and they can also be really light and silky and powdery, depending on the type of fatty acid that they have. One problem with plant oils is that they easily oxidize and they turn rancid. They change their scent, they change their color when they oxidize, and some of their oxidation products aren't really good for the skin as well. This is why synthetic products like esters have been made to address these issues. Esters are more stable than fatty acids, and they have better skin feel in comparison, and you can have really hydrating esters up to really powdery esters, and there are various types of skin feels out there that esters can bring to a product. Examples of esters are isopropyl isostearate, isopropyl myristate, propylheptyl caprylate. You'll see that most esters that you find in ingredient lists, they end with the suffix ate, ate. We also have silicones. Silicones are also synthetic polymers that give your product or your emulsion a very luxurious skin feel. These are mostly used for anti-aging products because they can also have a mattifying effect that can blur your fine lines and wrinkles. And they just give a very silky, powdery, matte, luxurious skin feel to an emulsion. And then you have your hydrocarbons. Hydrocarbons are composed of mainly hydrogen and carbon. And examples of these are your petrolatum, squalane, mineral oil, isohexadecane, paraffin, and microcrystalline wax. Most of these are emollients that are targeted towards hydrating your skin and keeping it, preventing moisture loss. Emollients can also be classified based on the skin feel that you want your emulsion to have. Let's say you want to make an emulsion that is very refreshing or hydrating, something that feels like cooling water when it hits your skin. Then you'd want to use volatile emollients like cyclopentasiloxane, capryl-methicone, undecane, tridecane, or isohexadecane. These emollients have really fast evaporation in the skin. That's why they can give sort of this cooling effect when you use them in your emulsions. You can also use light skin feel emollients like propylheptyl caprylate, dicapryl carbonate, isoamyl laurate, isopropyl isostearate, hydrogenated polyisobutene. These emollients have very good skin feel, and they spread really fast, and they give your emulsion a very silky feel as well. In the industry, Drunk Elephant, Protini, and their Lala Retro and other sorts of luxurious skincare use these type of emollients because of their skin feel. If you're gearing towards dry skin, then you'd want to use medium skin feel emollients that can increase your hydration by leaving a little bit of residual emolliency in your skin. Examples of these are capric caprylic triglycerides, isostearyl isostearate, squalane, and dimethicone. If you have really, really dry skin, or if you want your skin to be more elastic, then you'd settle for heavy skin feel emollients that give your skin a lot of residual emolliency after applying your product. Examples of these are petrolatum, pentaerythritol tetraisostearate, waxes, and butters. Emollients can also be classified according to their function. We have isostearyl isostearate, isosorbide dicaprylate, C12, C15 lactate, which are very hydrating and increase the moisture content of the skin. If you are concerned about skin aging, in which your skin elasticity is kind of going down, then you'd want emollients like PPG15 stearyl ether, capricaprylic triglycerides, propylene glycol isostearate, or silicones, which really increase the elasticity of your skin. There are also emollients that decrease DEWL, which is your transepidermal water loss or your moisture loss. And these actually are also called occlusives, as they prevent your skin from losing a lot of moisture. Examples of these are petrolatum, dimethicone, shea butter, and squalane. These are also termed as your skin protectants because they prevent or protect your skin against dryness and also against penetration of other unwanted foreign bodies. Finally, if you're making an emulsion that you want a matte feeling, like a powdery matte feel or a dry feeling, then you'd want to use emollients like C12, C15 alkyl benzoate, dicapryl carbonate, silicone elastomers, and silicones. These are mainly used for products that are for oily skinned people where they don't want that residual emolliency in their skin. Now we move to humectants. Humectants are ingredients that are capable of holding water to increase moisture in the skin. These are usually used around 1 to 7% of an emulsion, and the most commonly used humectant is glycerin. You'll find it everywhere in all sorts of formulation. Not because it is a filler, but because it gives skincare products a really good chance to increase your skin hydration. Here on the right, I've highlighted 2 common emollients that are used in the product CeraVe, which includes glycerin and sodium hyaluronate. So here are the most common humectants that are used in skincare. We have your glycerin, urea, sodium lactate, sodium PCA, hyaluronic acids, amino acids. These actually are also called your NMFs. These are present in your skin, and your skin naturally produces them in continuously to keep your skin hydrated and to prevent dryness. We also can use glycols like propanediol, propylene glycol, butylene glycol, or osmolytes like betaine, taurine, or myo-inositol. We can also use sugar alcohols like sorbitol, xylitol, or mannitol. All of these humectants have different skin feel as well. Like glycerin is very hydrating, but the problem is if you use it in high concentrations, then it starts becoming sticky or tacky. Then you'd want to use other humectants like sodium lactate or sodium PCA, which can also increase your skin hydration, but they have a better skin feel than glycerin. Hyaluronic acid, there are different types of hyaluronic acid depending on their molecular weight. They can range from like little less than 5,000 up to like 2 million or more than 2 million Daltons in molecular size, and they have their own profile in terms of hydration. So yeah, these are the most common humectants that are used in skincare. There are others that are coming out, but mostly they're based on these types of ingredients. Now we proceed to emulsifiers. Emulsifiers are the main ingredients that allow the mixing of oil and water. So we mentioned before that emulsions are a fine dispersions of oil in water or water in oil. So the way that we can keep the those two phases separated is through the use of emulsifiers. Emulsifiers are usually used at a percentage of 2 to 7%. And these are the two main types of emulsions. We have your oil in water, in which you have your fine dispersion of oil droplets in a sea of continuous phase of water, or your water droplets dispersion in a continuous phase of oil. Emulsifiers can also be classified according to their charge. Some can be classified as anionic because they have a negatively charged head and a hydrophobic tail. Hydrophobic means that it hates water, it dislikes water. Hydrophilic means that it loves water. Cationic emulsifiers have a positively charged head. If you go back to that structure here, this is, if you look in an electron microscope, then you'll see very tiny droplets like this, where the oil particle is surrounded by an emulsifier. And depending on the type of the emulsifier, this would have a charge around it. So let's say if you have an anionic surfactant like PEG stearate, then this surfactant micelle, this emulsion micelle or surfactant micelle would be surrounded by negatively charged heads. If it's cationic, then it will be positively charged. If it's non-ionic, then it would have no charge at all. Or if it's amphoteric, then it will be either positive or negative charge depending on the pH. These are just the list of common emulsifiers that are used in skincare. There are a lot of emulsifiers that are currently used, and emulsifiers have different functions and different skin feels, and the stability of an emulsion can actually be determined by the type of emulsifier that you use. Here you can see Jane Barber from Making Skincare's natural emulsifier experiment. Jane conducted this back in 2018 and repeated it in the summer of 2020. All the emulsions have the same base but have different emulsifiers. You can see some, especially the ones from 2018, have separated. You can see here that emulsifiers have a big impact on the final formula, affecting, for example, the texture, the skin feel, viscosity, spreadability, etc. Now we're going to discuss stabilizers or thickeners. These are ingredients that help stabilize emulsions or to change the thickness of an emulsion. And this is accomplished using electrostatic stabilization or steric stabilization. So what are these two? Electrostatic stabilization involves the use of charge. Since we mentioned a while ago that certain emulsifiers are anionic, or they have a negative charge on their head, and some are cationic, which means that they have a positive charge on their head that are pointed outside. This means that an emulsion micelle would have an overall negative charge on the outside. Since like repel and opposites attract, if you have two micelles that have negative charge all over their structure, then they would repel each other. Our goal in stabilization is to prevent these two micelles from combining and merging together and coalescing. So if you have negatively charged particles outside of these two emulsion micelles, then they would repel each other. You have your steric stabilization, which involves the use of spacers or polymers or arms. These are structures that kind of push away through their structure other emulsion micelles that are that are close to each other or that are on their way. And these are the most common types of stabilizers that are used in lotions and creams. Fatty alcohols the most common examples are cetyl alcohol, cetyl alcohol, and bihenyl alcohol. Cetyl alcohol gives emulsions some slip and glide and makes it the cream like really creamy. Cetyl alcohol is a thickener and also an emulsifier. Compared to cetyl alcohol, it's more draggy because it has more stearic acid in it. Bihenyl alcohol, on the other hand, gives the emulsion a more powdery matte feel. In terms of gums and polymers, you have your xanthan gum, sclerotium gum, carbomers, and polyvinyl alcohol. These are your steric stabilizers, in which they thicken the emulsion to prevent or delay the coalescence or the combining or coming together of two emulsion micelles. Now we're going to discuss preservative system and antioxidants. Preservatives are ingredients that prevent the growth of microorganisms that can cause harm to our skin, while antioxidants prevent the oxidation and rancidity of ingredients that oxidize easily. Here I've highlighted the sample ingredient list from CeraVe, and the preservative system that they've used is phenoxyethanol and ethylhexyl glycerin. They've also used disodium EDTA as part of their chelation system, which is part of their preservative system, and they've also used tocopherol as an antioxidant. You'll notice that in reading ingredient lists that most of the preservative systems that people use or chemists use, they use a combination of 2 or more preservatives. The reason for this is that it is hard to find preservatives that can target all of these 4 groups of microorganisms, since they have different characteristics. Basically, these 4 are your targets for preservative. You want to lower the number of these 4 so that you can say that your emulsion is safe. Your gram-positive bacteria, these are your bacteria that can produce exotoxins, and these can range from their effect on the skin can range from mild acne up to like really severe forms like scalded skin syndrome, where the skin kind of peels off. And these have been recorded to happen with people who use improperly preserved cosmetics. This kind of emphasizes the need to use like proper preservation, especially now that FDA is kind of cracking down on cosmetics that are improperly preserved. The second group are gram-negative bacteria. These can produce your endotoxins. These include like E. coli, Salmonella, Shigella, and the sorts. You can also have your molds. These are your fungi that can cause irritations or sensitivity. These are those fluffy white things or fluffy greenish things that you see on your bread or sometimes on your emulsions. And yeasts, these are fungi that can cause acne or folliculitis when there's a lot of them in a skincare product. The reason why we use preservatives, even though we think that our emulsion isn't contaminated, is because most of the times there aren't any changes in our product, even though it is filled with microbes. That's why it is always important to use proper preservative systems. Here's the list of common preservatives that are used in skincare, and the most common ones, most commonly used are parabens. Second one is phenoxyethanol. Third one is diazolidinyl urea and iodopropanol butyl carbonate, capryl glycol, ethylhexyl glycerin, sodium benzoate, potassium sorbate, and chlorphenazine. If you go to makingskincare.com/preservatives, Jane Barber has a comprehensive review of most of the most common preservatives used in skincare, as you can't use one preservative for all of your emulsions, as they're dependent on a lot. It's dependent on a lot of factors like pH, solubility, and the sorts. So definitely check it out. Chelators. Chelators are part of your preservation systems. Basically, these ingredients sequester divalent cations like calcium and magnesium, which are required for microbial growth. So if we're removing the stuff that is required for microbes to grow, then we can delay or inhibit their growth in the formulation. Examples of these are EDTA, ethylene diamine tetraacetic acid, or sodium phytate. Antioxidants. Antioxidants prevent the oxidation of ingredients or our skin cells. They usually serve as sacrificial targets for oxidation. So there are ingredients like linoleic acid, which are fatty acids that are present in a lot of plant oils or butter. They have double bonds in them, and that makes them especially prone to oxidation. The use of antioxidants make it so that these antioxidants would be targeted first. They would be oxidized first instead of the ingredient being oxidized. So to kind of sacrifice themselves so that your ingredients or your formulations stay unoxidized or stable. Examples of these are tocopherol, dimethylmethoxychromanol, pentaerythritol tetradietbutyl hydroxy hydrocinamate, these are pretty good antioxidants that are used in skincare. So now we proceed to actives. These ingredients help or enhance the skin's natural process to target various skin problems. And these are used around 0 to 6% depending on the type of active. For our sample ingredient list here, which is CeraVe Moisturizing Cream, the actives that they've chosen are ceramide NP, ceramide AP, ceramide EOP, sodium hyaluronate, cholesterol, and phytosphingosine. So it depends on the type of active, or it depends on the problem that you want to target. Let's say, for example, you want to target spots, then there are actives for that. Actually, there are actives for pretty much everything. For brightening, your goal is to reduce melanin production, which is your main pigment in your skin. Anti-acne actives, these are used to reduce the number and severity of pimples. Anti-aging, these are used to reduce the appearance of fine lines and wrinkles. Resurfacing or exfoliating actives removes dead skin cells to expose your baby smooth skin. You have your barrier repair ingredients. These are used to replenish barrier lipids and prevent further damage to the skin. And you also have oil control, which can reduce the appearance of sebum in the skin. For brightening, the target is to reduce the production of melanin, and the enzyme responsible for the production of melanin is called tyrosinase. So if you inhibit tyrosinase, then you would inhibit or lower the production of your pigmentation. That's why you can kind of inhibit the production of spots, especially after you've experienced inflammation, through the use of these brightening agents such as alpha-arbutin, niacinamide, N-acetylglucosamine, tranexamic acid, resorcinol derivatives, licorice, and other plant extracts. We also have your anti-acne actives, like the most common ones are salicylic acid, which can exfoliate the pores and can also control the acne-causing bacteria, Propionibacterium acnes. You have your retinol, which can decrease sebum production because like acne-causing bacteria can eat sebum and they can use it as their source of energy. So if you decrease sebum production, then they would have less food to eat. AHA, your alpha hydroxy acids, these are exfoliants, and they can also acidify the skin. Skin acidification is actually quite good because if you lower your skin pH, then you also lower the growth and propagation of P. acnes, which is your acne-causing bacteria. Then you also have anti-inflammatory agents like niacinamide and antioxidants like vitamin C, which prevents further damages. You have your anti-aging actives like retinol, which can increase cell turnover, which kind of revitalizes your skin. Vitamin C, which is an antioxidant, which can prevent basement membrane damage. Sunscreen, prevent UV damage. And silicones to mask the appearance of fine lines and wrinkles. Now you have your resurfacing or your exfoliating actives like alpha hydroxy acids or your AHA, glycolic or lactic acid. These can exfoliate your skin depending on their concentration, and of course they acidify the skin as well. Beta hydroxy acid, the main example is salicylic acid, which is more oil soluble. That's why it's more suited for pore exfoliation. Polyhydroxy acids like gluconolactone and lactobionic acid, these are bigger hydroxy acids, and they can't penetrate the skin as much. That's why they're more suited for mild exfoliations. And of course, again, you have your retinoids, your retinol or tretinoin to increase skin cell turnover and to exfoliate the skin as well. And you also have your barrier repair actives like ceramides. Ceramides are actually part of your skin, and they are responsible for keeping moisture in and preventing the entry of microorganisms from the outside. So as you age or as you encounter lots of barrier damage, your ceramides kind of decrease as you go. So adding more ceramides to your skin is a good idea to keep your barrier intact. You also have your Panthenol, which is your vitamin B5, and it can also increase your barrier repair. But the problem with Panthenol is a little bit sticky, so if you're using it more than 1%, then it's kind of doesn't have a great skin feel. Lactic acid and oxalic acid, these both increase ceramide production. And a petrolatum, which I also consider as an active because it prevents moisture loss way more than any other emollients out there. And if you keep your skin moist and hydrated, then you can prevent further barrier damage. Oil control. For oil control, it's kind of hard to tackle oil control as there aren't a lot of products that can decrease sebum production. You only have like your retinoids, L-carnitine, and sometimes green tea extract. But the most common way to deal with this is through sebum absorption through starch or silica or even sometimes silicone. Niacinamide can also be used as it exfoliates sebum ducts to keep your oil from accumulating on the surface on like your oil ducts. Okay, so now we move on to the last bunch or last group of ingredients, and we bunched up other functions that were not discussed before into a single one because these may or may not be included in a formulation compared to others. And these can include fragrances, coloring agents, and pH adjusters. Fragrance is a catch-all phrase for anything that's aromatic. And these can include essential oils, fragrance oils, or perfume or parfum. Essential oils are natural ingredients that are aromatic, and they are derived through distillation of botanicals. These are listed as scientific name of that for that particular botanicals in your ingredient list. Example would be orange. Orange essential oil is listed as citrus sinensis oil in your, well, actually citrus sinensis oil is for sweet orange in your ingredient list, and citrus aurantium would be for orange oil, something like that. For fragrance oils, on the other hand, these are your synthetic aromatic ingredients that are made through combining different other aromatic ingredients together, whether natural or synthetic, to form a specific scent. And perfume or parfum is pretty much the same as fragrance, except that in the EU, how you list your fragrance oils or perfume would be parfum, while in the United States it will be fragrance. What's interesting is that there are some products out there that you'll see as seemingly preservative free, when in fact their preservatives are actually hiding behind perfume or fragrance, because there are preservatives that are sold as perfume or fragrance as their INCI, as anything that's mixed in a specific concentration, something like perfume or fragrance, can be considered proprietary, and that's why they can get away in making something, a preservative, into a fragrance. Now, next are coloring agents, and examples of these are mica. Mica are nature's glitter. They're ground up minerals. They're just a group of silicates that are ground up to yield a certain color or a certain shimmer. And these are listed in your INCI as CI 77 number. That's how you identify that your formulation has mica in it. Of course, there are several ways to color skincare. There could be natural or synthetic ones, but these are usually the most common. This is usually the most common method. The last one is pH adjusters. So, adjusting formulation is important because we need to know what pH our product is, not just for the stability of the product itself, but also for the safety of our skin. We can't put anything that's too acidic or too basic on our skin, or else we risk damage. When you see sodium hydroxide, which is a hydroxide, or citric acid, which is an acid, don't be alarmed, because these are just ingredients to properly adjust the pH to match the skin, or to better make the formulation stable. These are usually added in very minute quantities, so the risk is lowered when they're at a very diluted concentration. Remember, it is the dose that determines the toxicity of a product. So examples of these are hydroxides, like sodium hydroxide, phosphate, like calcium phosphate, potassium phosphate, and amines, and also acids, of course, like citric acid, malic acid, or lactic acid, and the rest. Okay, so our next slide would be the ingredient usage rates. These percentages are the percentage bandings that are common in skincare. However, obviously, depending on the type of product that you are analyzing, there are exceptions. And it's always good to refer to suppliers if you're formulating a product on the correct usage rate, just to ensure safety. And if you're just a consumer analyzing a product, it's also good to refer to supplier supplier usage rates, which you can see online, to kind of see what's the safe usage rate for a particular ingredient. Okay, so humectants are usually used around 1 to 7%. You usually find these at 2%, but as you go up, they kind of have a tendency to become sticky, like glycerin, and that's why you opt to use use other humectants or in combination, so that you'd get more hydration but less tackiness or stickiness. Emollients, on the other hand, as mentioned before, or your lipids, these are your usually oil-soluble components that make your skin super soft and smooth by filling in the gaps or the cracks in your skin. And these are usually used around 4 to 10% depending on the product. Stabilizers, thickeners are usually used around 2 to 5%, while your emulsifiers are used at 2 to 7%. And this is hugely dependent on the type of emulsifier you're using. And then you have your actives. These are added around 0 to 6% usually. And your preservation system and antioxidant are used around 0.5 to 3%. Well, if you are a formulator, this percentage is usually determined, well, it should be determined using a preservative challenge testing, because there are always maximum or minimum that a supplier recommends for a preservation system, but it's hugely dependent on your formulation, and you can have a lot of bug food in your product, and even using maximum percent of a good preservative isn't enough. So and if you use high percentage of that preservative, it can be irritating to a particular person. So this should be determined using a preservative challenge test to better inform you whether or not your formulation is well formulated. And that concludes my discussion on the theory behind emulsions and the different compositions or group of ingredients that composes an emulsion. Now we proceed to the fun part, with Annalisa discussing the differences between emulsion, different types of emulsions like gel creams, lotions, and all that, and also analyzing certain products in the market, just to give you a better sense of how this all works in practice.
Thank you, Alex, for explaining about emulsions in such detail. Now let's see the difference between various emulsions, and let's analyze some products on the market together with Jane. Let's start with face creams. These are traditionally medium to thick emulsions, and on application they have a silky to rich skin feel. Often they contain waxy materials that require heat to melt, so these emulsions are created by hot process, and they contain water, humectants, and emollients, emulsifiers to keep these together, and thickeners and stabilizers to keep the emulsion stable. They contain also a preserving system and an antioxidant depending on the lipid phase. The amount of lipids will vary depending on the skin type, and typically it's between 3 and 10%, but a higher percentage may be used for very dry skin. Body lotions range from milky to medium, and the skin feel is mostly light and silky. They still contain waxy materials, so they also traditionally require heating. They also contain water, humectants, emollients, emulsifiers, stabilizers, preservatives, and they have slightly less thickeners. The lipids are usually around 10%, but most importantly they are light and long spreading to cover the body area. Body butters have a really thick texture. The skin feel could go from velvety to rich, but they rub in and dry quite quickly. And the thick texture is given by a higher amount of thickeners that require heating. They also contain water, humectants, emulsifiers, stabilizers, and preservatives. And the lipid content is typically around 10%, but can be higher. And the content of low melting point butters is kept to maximum 10% because of stability in different climates. Serums range from milky to anyhow low viscosity, and the skin feel is light. Actives are used at tested and effective concentrations, and they often have a higher price point. The process could be both hot or cold, depending on the materials selected, and they may also contain a higher amount of humectants, especially for hydrating serums. They contain a low input of emulsifiers because the percent of lipids is usually kept low and often max to 5%. The active ingredients can be both water or oil soluble, and the serums will also have a preserving system. Now let's see gel creams. They can have a medium to quite thick texture, but it's gel-like. So these products are often targeted to combination and oily skin types. So the skin feel is often light, but it can also be cushiony, depends from the product. They are made using polymeric emulsifiers and they don't require heating. Check our previous webinar to see how a gel cream is made. Like creams, they contain preservatives, humectants, and a medium to high input of polymeric emulsifiers. The lipids can go from 3 to 10%, but normally it's the lower side of the range and they are light esters. For hand and foot creams, the texture is medium to thick and they often come in tubes, so the texture must be so that the product doesn't leak out of the package, but not too thick that it cannot be dispensed. The skin feel is usually cushiony but not greasy, and they dry quite quickly. They contain waxy materials that require heating, and they also include humectants, emollients, emulsifiers, preservatives, thickeners, and stabilizers, and they may also contain active ingredients. For example, we can often find urea in feet and hand creams. The lipids often are around 10%, but they can go up to 15%, and they are fast drying and short medium spreading. So now let's see some products, some ingredient lists of some products, and let's start with Laneige Cream Skin Refiner. This is quite a special product because the texture is very watery. It's basically like a milk, and it's sort of a toner. So it's a bit different from what is usually found on the market as toners, but this is so a creamy toner because it's also an emulsion. And you can see here there is water, and then we have humectants like butylene glycol and glycerin, and you also see propanediol at the end of the list. And then we have emollients, which is the meadowfoam seed oil. And the 1,2-hexanediol is a solvent that acts as a booster for the preserving system. Then we have a bunch of emulsifiers, which are the polyglycerol 10 stearate, glycerol stearate citrate, sodium stearol glutamate, and then we have also inulin lauryl carbamate, which is an emulsifier but also acts as a stabilizer. Then we have the glyceryl caprylate and ethylhexyl glycerin that are part of the preserving system, and the disodium EDTA as well, which is a chelator. And you see at the end of the list we have the tocopherol, which is inserted in the preservation system, an antioxidant, and that's exactly an antioxidant that prevents the oils from oxidation, and so this increases the shelf life of the product. And then we have the Camellia sinensis leaf extract, which is an active, and here it might be inserted for marketing purposes, but we cannot really judge from the ingredient list because we don't know the specific ingredient that they used. Then going forward, we have the Kodali Vino Perfect Radiance Serum, And this serum is a serum with a low viscosity, but it's also an emulsion. And you see there's water, and then it has some humectants that are butylene glycol and glycerin, and then it has an emollient which is squalane. And you see here the tocopherol acetate is a derivative of tocopherol, so a derivative of vitamin E. But in this case, while the tocopherol can protect and will protect the product from oxidation, the tocopherol acetate is an antioxidant that is effective on the skin. So it protects skin from free radicals, and it acts as an antioxidant for skin, but it does not protect the formulation, so the product itself, from oxidation. Then we have an emulsifier, which is a CTRF20, along with the glyceryl stearate SE, which stands for self-emulsifying. And then we have another extract, which is probably their signature extract that is derived from grapes, which is the palmitoyl grapevine shoot extract. And then we have, after the glyceryl stearate SE, another active, which is a bisabolol, which is quite soothing. We have the fragrance that we inserted in miscellaneous, and then we have the preserving system, which is the caprylyl glycol, and along with the potassium sorbate and sodium phytate, which is another chelating agent. Then we have the acrylate C1030 alkyl acrylate cross polymer, which along with xanthan gum and carbomer is a stabilizer. And then we have the sodium hydroxide that is a pH adjuster and is used to neutralize these stabilizers so that they will swell and act as gelling agents, and they will give a little bit of body to this formulation. Next we see the Body Shop Shea Body Butter, and here we see that it has water and then a bunch of butters, which are the shea butter, the cocoa butter, and then we also have the babassu seed oil and dimethicone, which are emollients. And then we have the cetyl alcohol, which is a thickener, and it's used to thicken the product along with the rice bran wax down here. And then we have the glycerin, which is the humectant, and the cetyl glucoside and the sodium stearoyl glutamate are the emulsifiers. And you see here there is an ingredient called triethyl citrate, and many ingredients in skincare have several functions. And this ingredient acts as a fixative for fragrance, but it's also an emollient, and it acts against body odor, and it boosts the preserving system. So you often find it in deodorants for this reason. So these ingredients are inserted in miscellaneous because it has several functions. And then after the rice bran wax that we already said is a thickener, you see the phenoxyethanol, which is part of the preserving system. The sodium stearoyl glutamate, I already said it's an emulsifier. And then we have fragrance. And you will see, because in Europe it's compulsory to declare in the ingredient list those constituents of fragrance that are among the known allergens. You will see some constituents here of the fragrance, which are the linalool, the coumarin, the alpha-isomethylionone, the limonene. So these are part of the fragrance and are known allergens that must be listed. And then after the fragrance, we see the caprylyl glycol, which is still part of the preserving system, the xanthan gum, which is a gum that acts as a stabilizer for the formulation, and the tocopherol, which is an antioxidant that protects the product from oxidation. Then we have the citric acid, which is a pH adjuster, and we have seen here the constituents of the fragrance that are allergens. And then here we have the caramel and yellow 5 that give a nice buttery color to the product. So now Jane will go on to analyze some other interesting products.
Thank you, Annalisa. I'm Jane Barber from Making Skincare, and I'll be evaluating the final 3 products and showing you how an emulsion is made in the lab. For the first evaluation, we have Neutrogena's Hydrogel Cream, which is aimed at dry skin. Despite the name gel cream, this is actually a hot process oil, or rather silicone, in water emulsion based on silicone elastomers. This product is advertised as oil-free and so is using silicones instead. Water, the solvent, is unsurprisingly the first ingredient. It contains the cold process popular polymeric emulsifier, Cepigel 305, which is effective at emulsifying silicones. The other 2 emulsifiers are trade name Olivem 1000, which is usually reserved for natural formulations, but Neutrogena are relying on this for their olive extract claim. There's some carbomer in there as thickener stabilizer, and pH adjuster sodium hydroxide in the miscellaneous section is there to neutralize it. Synthetic beeswax is also there to help thicken and stabilize, and for some occlusivity. For humectants, glycerin is included, and sodium hyaluronate, another humectant, I also listed under actives. In the emollient section, I've listed the 2 silicone elastomer gels. You can see the giveaway word cross-polymer here. Cross-linked dimethicone with dimethicone. These gels are dry, non-greasy, silky smooth, and provide various degrees of viscosity. They are pretty expensive and are the main ingredient in a lot of anhydrous primers. Dalsil 9509, a silicone elastomer powder suspension, and also reduces shine and helps control sebum. Conversely, we have dimethiconol in another mixture, also which increases shine. This silicone gum is usually found in hair serums and is extremely thick, and so is usually sold diluted with dimethicone for ease of use. So dimethicone is in this product multiple times as it's in all those mixtures. The preservative system here is standard. Moving on to First Aid Beauty's Ultra Repair Cream. This is an oil and water emulsion in a body butter type format with actives thrown in. Again, water the first ingredient as the solvent, some fatty acids and alcohol here to stabilize, thicken, and also provide some rich creaminess and moisturization. Glycerin is included as a humectant. The first 2 emollients I've listed are inexpensive esters and are the main liquid emollients in this product. Next are the emulsifiers. These are standard, common, inexpensive emulsifiers, and the steric acid might also be saponified or partially saponified by the sodium hydroxide, creating sodium stearate, which acts as the second anionic emulsifier, the first being the GMS-SE. Going back to emollients, in small amounts there's shea butter, which always looks good on the label, and silicone, which also helps spreading and to reduce soaping, and lastly a pinch of expensive squalane. We are now well below the 1% line. Allantoin, an FDA-approved skin protectant which softens, and 3 extracts, some of which allegedly have anti-inflammatory, antioxidant, and skin lightening properties. We then have their star ingredient, colloidal oatmeal, at 0.5%, and ceramide 3, both claimed to help protect the skin. Xanthan gum helps stabilize the product, supporting the emulsification system. Eucalyptus essential oil is a fragrance and gives a slight cooling effect. The preservative system here is standard. The last product I'll be analysing is Typology's Firming Moisturiser. This is a natural oil in water emulsion. Like the others, water is first, and there's glycerin and diglycerin as humectants. The main emollient is dicapronyl ether, which is a light, fast-spreading and is hydrolysis stable. And there's also a touch of subaki oil. For thickeners and stabilizers, we have C10 to 18 triglycerides and hydrogenated castor oil in the oil phase, and 2 gums in the water phase. The emulsification system consists of 2 common anionic natural emulsifiers. For actives, we have the simple amino acid glycine to help moisturize, and the star ingredient backed by science, retinol, at a relatively high concentration of 0.2%. Retinol is the alcohol form of retinoic acid. It isn't as effective as retinoic acid, but it can help reduce signs of aging, acne, and minimize hyperpigmentation. Typology are most likely using the retinol supplied with soybean oil from BASF. Tocopherol, an antioxidant, is in the formula to help the sensitive ingredients such as retinol. Retinol is sensitive to heat, oxygen, and light, and the tube opaque packaging here helps with the latter two. Unlike the other 2 products, the preservative here is more natural based. The first 2 ingredients are preservative boosters, which help the Dermasoft 1388 Eco, which needs a pH of between 5 to 5.3 so it doesn't crystallize out. And in the miscellaneous section, we have the pH adjusters. So, now that we know the composition of a typical emulsion, how do we actually make the emulsion in the lab? On the left side of this slide is the lotion frame formulation Alex covered earlier. The right side shows how we divide up the ingredients into 3 phases. Water-soluble ingredients in one phase, oil-soluble ingredients in another phase, and heat-sensitive ingredients go into the last phase, the cool-down phase. So each phase is in its own separate container. So let's make it in the lab. Here we are weighing the water phase. Water first, and then glycerin and other water-soluble ingredients. Next, we weigh into a separate beaker the oil-soluble ingredients, which usually contain emulsifiers, oils, fatty alcohols. Both phases are then heated with stirring to around 75 Celsius. Once at 75 C, we remove the phases from heat. For stability, a homogenizer is used to obtain small and uniform droplets. Both phases are combined and homogenized. After homogenization, the emulsion is transferred to an overhead stirrer and mixed as it cools. We are now weighing the sensitive cool-down phase ingredients. Once the lotion has cooled to below 45 Celsius, we add the cool-down phase ingredients and mix again. Once at room temperature, the emulsion can then be packaged, and here is the final emulsion. We have now come to the end of part 1 of this webinar, and look forward to seeing you again in a few weeks for part 2, which will be focused on reverse engineering.